COSM, let's continue our bear thesis on this as I still continue to believe that there is some more downside to be expected for the coming sessions. What is up, you guys? Thank you so much for stopping by once again on this fine Tuesday night. We're going to be covering COSM with some technicals, raw price action, maybe some statistics within that as well. But before we get started, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video with a friend so that you and them could consider joining our trading community in Discord called ARCa. With that said, let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so yes, COSM is still continuing that downside thesis that we've been looking at actually for now several days. And lots of people, they actually didn't believe me on this, and they were saying that the PR is coming out this and that and this and that. But I remember, guys, I don't usually look at fundamental analysis whatsoever. I'm a short-term systematic trader. I look at the charts, and the charts tell me, statistically speaking, of course, and quantitatively, they tell me what they're telling me. You know, so I'm here to be the bearer of either good news or bad news. No matter what it is, I'm going to show it to you and share it to you as it is, as I do not believe in pump and dumps. I do not believe in any of that that thesis in making money. Right. So in this case, yeah, let's go ahead and just talk about the immediate short-term time frame analysis, starting with the Crypstex ARC-Series indicators. Okay, so we're going to be looking at first the ARC-DBSI, which is an indicator that actually takes a score, a cumulative score based on every single candle count, and that actually gives us a variable, and that variable is an average of the bulls versus the bears. In this case, you can actually still see that in the bi-hourly chart, the bears are still in control with a 53% score versus a 47% score from the bulls. And right down at this little red dot, which was printed on December 13th, we can actually see that this was the sell signal printed for this very immediate short-term time frame. And as you can see, it has not recovered into having us buy, right? It hasn't given us the blue little dot, which usually signals a buy zone. So now, according to ARC-DBSI, as long as we are below the 13-day exponential moving average, which is represented by this yellow line here, the trend is bearish. Okay, so now upon looking at the ARC Enhanced MACD, which is another indicator that can be available to you, just make sure to send me a DM and I will give you the details as to how to acquire these indicators, these fine indicators. Okay, so yes, so we still have a bear signal print, and it was actually flashed a little bit more aggressively than the ARC-DBSI, printing on just 1 2-hour iteration before the ARC-DBSI. So we are looking at a bear signal, and it's still suggesting a downside, a continuation. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next chart. So this is the broadening descending wedge that we've been looking at for quite some time now. Okay, so in this case, we can actually see that we broke out on that test number 4, which is actually following the golden rule of 3 that we talk about within this channel very often. And that test number 4, I was warning everybody that we still need to come back and test our newly converted resistance into support. We have tested that support one time, and it looks like we're coming right back down to test that once again. So in doing so, we do have a few psychological targets down here that we must consider. Okay, so particularly to the 50-day simple moving average located at about 22 cents, and this tiny gap that is made from the wick high of this candle on November 21st to the wick low of this candle here printed on the following day, November 22nd. That actually presented a 1 cent gap. Okay, so that can also be a psychological factor to play within our price objective. Okay, so now there are several areas that share confluence within that little gap at about 18 cents to the 50-day simple moving average to 22 cents. Okay, so there are several areas and several things that are matching that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move and verify some of those. For example, the 18-cent level that this gap is presenting is very much in confluence with the following charts, 2-spot-618 at 1875, which is the chart that we've been looking at when we were calling out the head and shoulders bottom side. So that very bottom target here is located at 1875. I'm not saying that we're going to go right back down to those levels. In fact, we actually do have some obstacles to overcome that in order to meet that downside. First of all, we do have the one spot 618 located at 2636, and also not to mention the 2 fib at 2345, but we also do have the 2 spot 272 at 2138, which is also a relevant area to use as a support bounce. But since we are in a descending channel here, we could see a potential drop to test that very bottom of the support before a continuation onto the upside. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next chart now. Now, another area of confluence here within that 18-cent target is actually this descending channel on a larger term time frame, which is a daily chart here. Okay, so this daily descending channel has presented also a respect to the golden rule of 3, and we have broken out on test number 4 and have retraced ever since. Okay, so that support confirmation for the newly converted resistance into support of that channel is located at 18 cents. At actually, let's see, let me just go ahead and imply that it's about 1812, which is absolutely in confluence with the previous targets that we were looking at. Okay, so now, oh yeah, one more thing to mention within this area here. New viewers, new listeners, this is volatility you're looking at, this indicator here with the red bars. Volatility represented by this indicator BBWP. Volatility is direction neutral, so we usually pair it with an indicator similar to this one down here, which is called stochastic momentum, which is proprietary to TradingView software, which, by the way, there is a link below for you to consider making an account with TradingView, as that would greatly help me out. Okay, so consider those things. But yeah, so anyway, we do pair it with stochastic momentum, and I have ran a back test of just this indicator and several tickers, and I have gotten an average of about 75 to 91% in accuracy in guessing the asset's direction, right? So in this case, we can actually we're actually starting to see a little bit of a slowdown from the pivot, from the aggressive downside that it's suggesting. So it is now at a critical oversold percentile, which likely means that this downside has some limitations to it before a recovery and a pivot to the upside. As you can see here, the volatility component, which is represented by the spectrum line here within the BBWP, is now suggesting a cross above the moving average and now suggesting an entry yet again into the critical volatility zone, which I consider to be anything above this 90% trend line with the color red. So anything within that 90 percentile is considered to be critical volatility. So if this thing is starting to pivot towards the downside and it's going to start making its pivot towards the upside, we can only assume that the volatility moved to the upside after a continuation to the downside first, maybe explosive. Okay, so this is speculative. Please know that I'm not a financial advisor. Take whatever I do show and iterate within these videos as a form of entertainment only. Okay, I can't suggest for you to buy or sell any assets. I need you to do your own DD and everything will be fine. Okay, you guys. So yeah, so I still see a continuation to the downside. Now let's look at the RSI. Okay, so which is another momentum based indicator. So these are the zones that I would like for you to focus in on. Okay, these 4 zones right over here are actually part of the RSI, which is just like this here. Okay, so let's look at the immediate short-term time frame. This is going to be the 30-minute RSI, suggesting, pardon me, suggesting a continuation to the upside. However, it does have the moving average as a form of sorry guys. It does have the moving average as a form of resistance, which is likely to be faced since we are well within the bear grips. The grips of the bear strength percentile, to be exact. Okay, and another thing is that we can actually see some iterations of a potential linear regression here that's happening. So there is the potential to where we can actually recover ever so slightly in the immediate short-term time frame, followed by a rejection from the junction between the bear weakness and the bear strength percentile, and continuing our path to the downside. Okay, so we definitely have to look at things like this. As of late, I know that the mathematics within trading have not been following too much of linear regression. It's been actually more, the relevance is actually sitting more towards a non-linear regression mathematics. So, but in this case, it is pertinent for us to consider. Okay, so now let's look at the bi-hourly time frame. So the bi-hourly time frame is suggesting an ever so slightly continuation to the downside. The moving average is above us, which is bearish. Okay, please remember that the moving average is the 14-day period. And the purple line is the RSI signal, which is standard to any RSI setup. Okay, so we are still looking at some slight downside here. The pivot is starting to slow down. However, the moving average is still suggesting some downside, so downside is still likely. Okay, so now the 6-hour RSI is in the same precarious situation that the bi-hourly is in. It's still suggesting a continuation to the downside. And as you can see, the RSI signal has actually been using that moving average as a form of resistance and a guide to the way down. So now it has entered the bear strength percentile, the RSI signal in particular. Okay, so now whenever we're in these shallow areas, we can only assume and we can only speculate with a gravitational pull right into the opposing zone. The bearish thing is that we do have the moving average above us, which can serve, again, as that form of resistance before a continuation onto the downside. Now, what's actually giving us the actual downside confirmation is more the daily RSI. So the daily RSI moving average is absolutely pivoted towards the downside, and as well as the RSI signal. Okay, it's now entering the bear weakness percentile. But please remember, I do always say this, but as long as we're within that shallow area of either zones, we're likely to be gravitated into the prior zone or the opposing zone. Okay, so now just for giggles, let's look at the bi-daily. Okay, bi-daily making a bearish cross below that, below the 14-day moving average, suggesting a continuation onto the downside. Let's see, the 3-day is still aggressively showing us downside continuation. However, it may be limited since the moving average is actually below us. We can potentially use that as a form of support before a bounce, but there is still some significant downside according to the 3-day RSI. Now, 5-day RSI is also suggesting continuation to the downside, and it's now at the junction between the bear strength percentile and the bear weakness percentile. So we're definitely looking at a multi-day continuation to the downside, unless a catalyst comes out, like I mentioned yesterday. Unless Elon says I buy this thing, or somebody says like, okay, so Google's gonna now partner with Cosmos Holdings for some ridiculous reasons, then everything's gonna go up to the moon. Okay, so another thing to consider as well is that tomorrow will be the FOMC, I'm sorry, the Fed rate hike. So a lot of things are going to be in sympathy to the movement within that news. So please keep an eye out for that. Okay, so I think this is a pretty good place for me to leave off the video. Yeah, so let me see. Did I have actually one more thing to say? No, I have nothing else to say, you guys. Yeah, if you want the Crypstex indicators, just send me a DM and we'll go ahead and go over the details as to how to acquire them. But yeah, with that said, I wish you well. I wish you a very good night. Check the links in the description below, and I will catch you at the bell mañana. Adios.